Good evening and welcome to Artscape. I'm your host, Russ Nash, and with me tonight is Dean Schwarz from Decorah, Iowa, a master potter of 31 years productivity and experience and a pupil of the great Marguerite Wildenhains. Also, there are several pots here. There's Dionysus, Ulysses, a Peruvian woman, and I believe an owl. Dean, what connects owls with Dionysus, Ulysses, and Marguerite Wildenhain? Are they all from Europe, as she originally was?
Well, all of the things come from a great tradition, and that tradition seems to cross any international boundaries, I think.
I guess you're right.
It's the earth and the masters who have made things of earth, who are now earth, come forward again and present it in a new way each time.
And I guess Marguerite Wildenhain, who was your immediate teacher in California some years ago, is now earth, and she had a philosophy, did she not, of the importance of human connection by means of the hands with earth.
Absolutely. She was a great scholar and potter, student at the Weimar Bauhaus in Germany, starting in 1919.
I see. And she had important teachers too, did she not?
Yes, she had Max Krahan, the country folk potter in Germany, and the great German expressionist sculptor Gerhard Marx.
Marx seems to have lived and worked in Germany as a Bauhaus artist or craftsman under the Hitler regime during the Hitler period. How did Hitler feel about this Jewish craftsperson?
Well, Marx wasn't Jewish, but Wildenhain was. But I know that Hitler didn't feel good about Marx. Actually, it was toward the end of the Bauhaus tradition when Hitler, when the Bauhaus moved to Dessau, actually asked Gerhard Marx to do his portrait, and Marx refused to do so. And it took great courage. He also, during that time, did the eulogy for many artists who died during the war and publicly spoke out in a great art tradition and was never able to really be quieted down, even though his house was bombed 3 times during the war years, and one of his sons was lost to the war.
Lost his son.
His spirit lived on and still lives.
Terrific. And Marguerite Wildenhain was his pupil, and she escaped from Nazi Germany then and came to the United States.
That's correct. She came through Holland and indirectly to the United States, first to New York City, then to Oakland School of Art, and then finally into the hills north of San Francisco, where she lived as a semi-hermit in the Armstrong Redwood State Park.
And that's where you became her pupil?
That's where I studied with her.
I see. And then for a while, I believe you were teaching at Luther College.
Taught for 23 years at Luther College. In the last 4 years, I've been making pots.
In Decorah
in Decorah, in rural Decorah.
What about the snobbish tradition that would say classical architecture, painting, and sculpture are art, whereas pottery, weaving, and so on are merely craft? Do you agree with that snobbish distinction?
Well, a lot of that took place during the Renaissance, and Leonardo da Vinci seemed to be one of the leaders of that.
The great Leonardo.
And Walter Gropius had the idea of doing away with that by starting the Weimar Bauhaus, which he'd take two masters, a country person who was a traditional artist and an artist in the sense of art and sculpture and painting and so forth.
And Wildenhain had such a
She had two masters, and the idea was to form one master of form and technique called a Formmeister. And after 7 years of working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, she finished and became a master potter and one of the first Formmeisters out of the Bauhaus school.
And that is the tradition, one of the traditions anyhow, one of the nexuses of classical and Renaissance and craft tradition that you take your place.
That's true, but still I hear at many shows I go to, there may be a painter who's there and they'll say such and such a painter is showing his art, and Dean Schwarz is showing his pottery.
I see. Well, isn't that something? By functioning in that tradition, does that mean you pay no attention to, let's say, the Indian tradition? Iowa, there's an Indian word, or decor, I believe that's another Indian name. Do you take nothing of that sort into account as American?
I feel that you can only be a part of what you live. And I've lived in Iowa most of my life and still celebrate the fact. The Iowans were really wonderful people who lived here right into historic times. And Chief Wakan Decorah was one of the chiefs who we respect in Decorah by using the name for our town, the next town. And Chief Winneshiek, our county, was an Iowa. And some of the pots that I have here, for instance, this one right here, is a pot that has some ground up pot shards in it.
Beautiful
and
pot.
Here, when I was looking for arrowheads in the field, I was able to grind some of those broken pieces that were broken by the plow, grind them up and put them into a nickel slip, and then have those old pots very respectfully put into the new pot for a little spirit.
Isn't that exciting? Terrific. And yet, that you're not too nationalistic, are you? That hat that the woman has on her back, that seems to be Peruvian. She is a Peruvian?
Yes, this is a Peruvian woman, and I don't know if you can see it from there, Russ, but she has a necktie on.
Oh.
And that necktie is reflective of her. She has, here at the very top, some very modern sunglasses.
Oh, I see.
And those sunglasses then are made into a self-portrait on her tie. And you see several of her pictures with the glasses on there. So I went to Peru to study those pots that were made by the Peruvian women 2,000 years ago. And one of the things I learned was to be traditional, you have to show things of your time. So I took the old story, and so as not to be conventional, that is, just take what's good of the past and add nothing to it, I added self-portraits, I added old pots, and I put a tie of our time and a hat of our time on this ancient woman.
That's terrific.
But she is still wearing the old poncho that those pot shards are in.
So your notion of the tradition, or being properly traditional on the part of an artist, craftsperson, is to keep a firm hold on certain strands of the past, but also to adapt to the ongoing scene and to point toward the future, I take it.
To be respectful of the past and choose those things that are of value from our past and add new things of our own time to it.
Great.
That's correct.
Marvelous. Well, looking a little bit ahead toward the future, I understand you're going to be in an art show at the Dubuque Museum of Art pretty soon. When will that be?
Well, I guess I'll have to return to jail again, since the show is
Oh,
going to be at the jailhouse.
You mean the Dubuque Museum of Art?
Yes, I was there for a show last Christmas,
It's
and I'm looking forward to displaying my things there. It's a beautiful interior, and I have some very special pots that I want to put actually in some of the jail cells. They're rather dark black pots, Schwarz pots.
Oh, Schwarz pots.
Yes, and they're going to have a nice temporary home there. I hope they get food and water at least while they're there.
Well, you told me that they have this dark character and will be in the cells partly because they have an intimate connection with an old Egyptian funerary function. Am I right?
That's right. They're canopic urns, and the idea is for them to hold emotions or things rather than the actual body parts like the Egyptians did. These hold spirits, like one is a telephone conversation, another a figure.
Oh, they're not Egyptian then, the canopic.
The original ones, the original canopic urns were that I took from my beginning. And then I put them to modern time now, for my own ideas and made a jump of or leap of faith to our time from the old tradition again.
That's wonderful.
I like to do that wherever I go and look at the things from the past.
Very fine. Well, as I recall, you have a pot here right with us that looks back toward the Greek tradition. I think you have one that tells the story of Ulysses or Odysseus sailing past the Sirens.
Yes, I would like to read a rather long poem that I have of this particular pot. And I don't know if you realize it. I know you're a scholar of ancient things and
I try to be.
Writing. But one of the discoveries I quasi-made myself was that Homer actually was a female. Perhaps you didn't know that.
No, I didn't realize that.
But Homer in his great writing was Linda Homer. I named him so.
I see.
And Linda Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus was told by Circe, you will come to the sirens who enchanted all who come near them. He who hears their singing will never again be welcomed home by his wife and children. Therefore pass these sirens by, and stop your men's ears with wax. If you wish, you can listen yourself. For you may get the men to bind you to the prow of your ship. Then you may have the pleasure of listening as a figurehead. If you beg and pray the men to unloose you, then they will bind you even faster. And then he heard, "Come here, renowned Odysseus, and listen to our two voices." So this is where I left it, and I thought, well, these two voices have been things I've been hearing from the past all the time. One says, "Come here," and invites you, and one goes away. So I call it, a modern ear struggles to hear an ancient cassette from a Greek time capsule.
That's a noble tradition. We have Homer's, we have Pope's Ulysses, of course. Kazantzakis has one, James Joyce has one, and now we have your version.
Well, on this particular pot, we'll see that Homer here is in the form of a figure or a portrait of Homer, but in this particular case you see him wearing, instead of laurel leaves, you see oak leaves. And here he is represented as a hot air balloon. Did anyone ever call you sort of a hot air when you're talking on the TV here or writing your things?
Only in jest, of course.
Okay. And then the other side over here will show some other things. You'll see, again, my teacher. Here she is sailing in the moon, and you see the oak leaf coming across, and so she's the woman in the moon here.
I see.
And down below, you can see a boat, and it's being fashioned down here. Over on this side, you can perhaps see a fishing plug toward the bottom. And then you see the boat itself is Odysseus.
I see.
And his men are holding him back by the reins, and they're rather clever and interesting men. So it's my story of a Greek drama. And each time I try to do this in my pots, I try to give a new angle or a new theory of the myth. And even though the sirens are there, in the form of a fishing lure, he's being held back by his men.
Terrific. Well, I believe you have another version of Marguerite Wildenhain, do you not, Dean, on the
yes.
pot back here?
I did a whole series of pots.
Has something to do with the moon?
That I named Woman Who Changes the Moons. And as I was going up to Alaska to do artist in residency, I went to Kitwankul and Kitwanga, British Columbia, and saw the totem poles there. And these totem poles are sometimes represented in rather regular fashion, like you find them here, and then some fashions you'll see them like on this side, where it's more realistic, and there is my teacher, Marguerite Wildenhain, abstracted. On the other side of this one, I have a totem for some hot air balloons again, which I tend to like as a kind of a joke. And
maybe you're unduly influenced by The Wizard of Oz.
Well, perhaps. I love The Wizard of Oz.
It is a great story.
It's great words. This piece here, too, also brings some of the ancient pot shards to it. And the representation of the totem you're seeing on this side is of the black spruce trees.
Oh.
When my son Gunnar and I went out into the tundra there, we found black spruce trees that were only about an inch tall. We also found little willows, and nothing grew any taller than that. So we were very amazed by that, so I made it into the totem. But this pot had to do not only reminding me of Marguerite, but it's called Darkness Prevailing. We almost missed the ancient totems. And the key in this title is that we almost missed them. Luckily that we didn't. We still have time. And between father and son, or one generation or another now, we need to hold those things that had to do with blood relationships and things that are important to us. If we lose those things, if we lose that and the darkness overtakes us, then our society, I think, won't do as well.
And you think the family connections are certainly an important
absolutely
element of
necessary.
that.
One other one I did, we have a century farm in our family, and that one is just merely titled Century Farm, Will You Mend the Fences My Father Made? And my wife's grandfather was in the Civil War and bought the farm. Now the question is, we love it very much. Will our children love the farm and take care of it, and will their children take care of the farm? So in my artwork, I bring things that I think are very important to the society, as well as just the making of a regular pot.
Well, the totem raven is important to me, and lately I've been very much interested in Tlingit frog. I don't have one around the house, but somehow I want to hang on to my part in that tradition. But let's turn to another aspect. Okay. You mentioned your children, or your son. How many children
do you have? 6 children.
Are they into the arts?
All of my children are in the arts in one way or another, and all have made pottery.
Is that right?
And they paint. They have done weavings and quilters, musicians. And my wife is, I think, one of the really fine poets and short story writers.
Terrific. It would almost seem to me that you do what could be called painting on many of your pots. It certainly should not be thought of as mere decoration, I don't think. Do you feel that kind of commingling of the disciplines is okay in polyglot America today?
I think it's all right if the things that are expressed on the pots fit the pots. They must fit like a skin, though. Marguerite always said they must fit like the skin of a rattlesnake. And she admired the way nature decorated. If they're just put on any old way and not given respect to the mother pot they're on, it won't work.
So this Bauhaus idea of bringing together various or almost dialectically opposed or traditionally distinguished traditions prevailed in many ways then in Wildenhain's thought. What kind of work did she do?
Well, she is really one of the greatest 20th century potters, and her work is represented in the really big collections. She's in the Museum of Modern Art collection, and she's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, all the big museums. And her work is much like mine, but better. I think her things had a real life to them, and
but you are
I love her work so much, and it's just grown to be a part of me, and I think that when I've made pots, as long as she made pots, it's my hope that I will get to be as good as she is.
She made them for 50 years anyway, I guess.
Over 50 years. She died when she was 89, and Marx died when he was 93.
They outlived Adolf Hitler by many years.
Yes, yes. And their soul will outlive him by far. Yes.
What museums have you been in? A few museums yourself?
I'm in quite a few collections, pots I've made and things that I've made with my family, and but we're in no large museums like Marguerite, but we are in museums that we feel are large, and they've been generous to have purchased our pieces for 21 public collections now.
I can see where they would. Well, how about Iowa? Are you in? Is your work in a number of?
We're in the Museum of Art at the University of Iowa. We're at the Fisher Community Center in Marshalltown. We're at the Ambrose Center in Cedar Rapids, Museum of Art there. And
Old Jail Gallery, Dubuque?
We don't have one in the permanent collection there, but we're certainly hoping we'll become part of that.
We'll have to put in a plug for that. Try to recommend that the Dubuque Art Association consider acquiring and putting one of your pots in the permanent collection.
That would be very nice.
Your show, is it your show that you will be exhibiting in at the Dubuque Museum of Art in the Old Jail Gallery, or are you part of, or will you be with a painter? Or?
I'm with Mrs. Rossiter,
Dorothy Rossiter.
And she is a wonderful watercolor artist, and we talked to each other about having a show several years ago, and so this is really really a wonderful opportunity to show with her. I really enjoy her each time I come to the art fair here, and the spring festival. She and her husband are really dear people.
Oh, and you do sometimes show in the Dubuque Fest then on the third weekend of May. That's terrific.
I've always enjoyed that.
I've always enjoyed having you in that
I like
show.
the spirit of the
Dean.
place here.
We think we have a marvelous spirit. Yeah. Well, what would you like to ask me, or what should I have asked you now that you think we didn't touch on sufficiently?
Well, I would like to talk about this piece right here, if I may.
Fine, please do.
This is one of my most recent works, and if I may pick it up here and show you. This spring, near my house, we were lucky enough to have some hatchings of some little owls.
I see.
And these 4 little owls have inspired me to make a series of owls.
I see.
And this one here has some cumulonimbus clouds building up here for earrings and rain coming out. And here in the very front is a necktie that has lightning. And again, I'm trying to see if you can see how the form or the decoration fits on the shape. And I'm going to turn this now a little bit. So in the back, you can see some cumulonimbus clouds that are building up. And as they build up, then there's a place here that the full moon is coming out behind the clouds. And again, please see how it tries to fit the form as best I can. So that's a kind of a fun piece. I just got back from a show in Memphis, and the owls are very popular there, so they migrated actually from my booth into the homes of Memphis, and that was rather delightful.
Very fine. I hope if you have any owls in the Dubuque Fest Art Fair in the park downtown on the third weekend of this coming May, that maybe you can have a similar migration.
You probably don't have enough barred owls in the community.
I don't think we do. What are they like? I only know the hoot owl, I think.
These are wonderful, rather large owls in this area. And when I first became familiar with them a few years ago, I heard outside the house a little psst, psst, like that. And we thought, well, what is this noise? And so many times I would go with a flashlight crashing through the woods there trying to see them. And then last spring I shined the light up into the tree, and there were 4 of them all lined up in a row, and they were the cutest little owls. And they'd just lean forward and psst, psst.
Were they full grown, or were they little?
No, they were maybe 6 or 7 inches tall is all they were, just holding on to the little dead branch.
They sound like something else, I suppose, make a difference on when they're full grown.
When we had students at the school at the time, they thought they were breathers, they said. They were people breathing out there, and they wondered what that was. I thought that was rather mysterious. It was wonderful to find these owls.
Let's turn to another aspect. Dean, how do you feel about the representational versus the abstract quality? Do you feel that Peruvian lady with a necktie is as representational as she should be? Or
I start out with pieces like you've seen. These are mainly representational pieces here. But all of mine become that no matter how abstract they get. In fact, my owl series, if you would see like the 100th piece in the series, I make only one-of-a-kind pieces, then you wouldn't recognize them as those same barred owls anymore, but you would recognize them as a very distant abstraction. And so if you didn't see all of the steps along the way, you wouldn't recognize them then as the owl. And I like both ends. And since I don't like to make any 2 things alike, I like to go from the objective to the non-objective. And I guess where I thrill the most is in the end if I can get the same idea across without being objective about it. It's like poetry then. You've taken away and taken away and taken away until there's an essence left.
So as between the fine arts and the crafts, also between the representational and the abstract, if you're in this Bauhaus tradition, you don't always see absolute exclusion. You see possibilities of some kind of a middling synthesis.
Well, I see that I'm a product of the Bauhaus school, and it is tradition, but I am only that in the past. What I need to do is to become a builder of my end of the tradition, so that when my students, I have over 100 of them now who are full-time potters, and their students become a new tradition, all the time changing, so that the tradition is a thing that never stays. If it's tradition, if it's convention, it'll stay, and it'll just won't have anything added to it, and it'll become boring.
It becomes stultifying. Whom do you feel you've handed this tradition on to in the next generation from you? Your children? You have had many students. Do you have any especially representative?
I have so many that it's really a bad thing to list them. It would be like picking out who is the favorite of my children.
Yes.
So I'm not going to do that, but I'll tell you that if you'd like to have a list, I'd be glad to furnish you a list of very fine potters. And some of my children are some of those.
Where would I write you?
I'm at South Bear, and that's in Route 5 in Decorah, Iowa.
Decorah, Iowa. And the show you will be in with Mrs. Rossiter, she'll be on the wall and you'll be on the pedestals, is in November in the Old Jail Gallery, right?
Well, I'm sure that the audience that's watching will come out and judge whether there is still a difference between art, Mrs. Rossiter's, and pottery, or whether the pottery is hopefully arising up to be part of art also.
Certainly they'll both be Iowan, and they'll both be
yes.
Right here in Dubuque for us
two friends.
to go and see for ourselves and keep pondering about this continuum that you have sketched for us tonight. Well, I certainly want to thank you, Dean Schwarz, for coming to Artscape tonight and sharing with us some of your 31 years as a potter in Iowa with the many traditional strands that you are able to respond to and yet weave into the original compositions and adapting to the present-day scene and looking toward the future.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a slow learner, so with 31 more years, perhaps I'll get better.
Well, I've been an admirer of your pots for many years, and I still interested.